Let's imagine that you play against the guy who plays King's Indian defense or Grunfeld defense always. Yeah. So there is big probability that he's going to play you g6 in the second move. Okay, let's see. White plays d4, knight f6, bishop f4, of course, and then g6 for black. Okay, so now there are a few options for white, but I recommend you to play this move, knight c3. Now our idea is to play queen d2 and then long castle. So why we play knight c3? Because we want to play queen d2. Also, there is one more reason. White wants to play e4, you see? So that's it. White prepares e4 with this move. After knight c3, there are a few possible moves for black. Let's start with d5 move. So maybe black is Grunfeld player. You know that in Grunfeld defense, black has this setup. Also, he doesn't want to give you chance to push e4. So now we cannot play e4, as you see. Okay, so d5, then white plays queen d2. You see what is our idea. We want to play bishop h6 to exchange bishops and long castle. So our king is safe there, and we choose to play long castle in this line. After queen d2, again, black has a few options. One of them is to play h6. So he doesn't want to allow bishop h6. He doesn't want to exchange bishops. By the way, why do we want to exchange dark-colored bishops? Because his bishop on g7 is like his key piece, his best piece. So we just want to trade bishops, that's it. Okay, so he plays h6 maybe first. Yeah, now we cannot play bishop h6, but we can play f3. Why we do this? Because first of all, we prevent knight e4, and second of all, we want to play e4. That's it, we want to gain space in the center. After f3, he plays maybe bishop g7, and then white plays long castle. Now let's wait for a moment. You see that we are planning to play king b1 and e4. That's clear plan, that's like ideal setup for us. On the other hand, black cannot play short castle at all because you see that h6 pawn is hanging constantly. That's the problem with this line, with this h6 move. So after queen d2, h6 is a suspicious move because white can just play f3 and long castle. Later in the future, king b1 and then e4. Instead of h6, black could also play something like c6. He doesn't want to develop this bishop to g7. Okay, possible, sure. We play f3 again. Again, we want to play e4 in some moment. Then black plays b5. He wants to start with attack on the queen side. He knows that we might play long castle, so he wants to prepare attack there. We don't want to play long castle now. We can, because his attack isn't so strong, but why would we do that? It's better for us to play something like a3. So we want to prevent b4, and we want to prepare e4. So for example, if we play e4 directly, the problem is b4, we need to move our knight away, and then e4 pawn is hanging. So that's the reason. We just want to keep our knight on c3. It's good there. After a3, black can play, for example, e6. Now he wants to push b4, and after a takes, to take with the bishop. But you can just play knight h3, and now after b4, just take there, bishop takes, and play e3. Black has nothing. And also you see that he already weakened some dark squares on the king side. You know, that's the problem. He played g6, and after that he played e6. So dark squares are a big problem for him. Instead of playing b4, he could also play knight bd7. but then just e3, a6 maybe for black, then bishop goes to e2, maybe h6 for him, and then finally e4. What do we want to do later? We want to play short castle, rook from a1 to d1, and again black has problems because he cannot play short castle in the future. h6 pawn is hanging, and if he plays g5 in some moment, the problem will be that he weakened his king side too much. He weakened his pawn setup there, you know. And yeah, after short castle rook d1, we are better, clearly better, because we have like very solid position, and black is struggling here. He cannot find the right plan. That's the problem, and also he has holes on dark squares. Okay. Okay, e6 isn't so great move. Instead of doing that, he could also play bishop g7, but then we do this. So we were waiting for bishop g7 to play bishop h6 to exchange bishops. As I said, his dark-colored bishop is one of the key pieces in this opening. So we just want to take it. That's it. We just want to eliminate it. Bishop takes h6, queen takes h6, maybe queen d6, and then e3. Now you see what's the problem in black position. He cannot play short castle, and you see that he already opened his queen side too much. So long castle also isn't so good. So yeah, the problem is what to do with the king. That's the problem, and I don't know. I don't recommend black to play this variation. So now white can just normally develop his pieces, and everything will be great. So for example, black plays e5, bishop d3 for white, knight bd7, knight from g1 to e2, a6 for black, and then maybe we can play b4. Why not? Yeah, our next move is short castle, definitely. If he plays something like a5, we can play short castle. You see that black cannot take on b4. He can, but that's not good, because a takes, now rook on a8 is hanging, he takes, rook takes, and now if black takes the pawn on b4, then we are going to take this pawn. If he takes with the knight, then there is double attack, queen g7, and black is losing. Rook is hanging, knight is hanging. Yeah, that's it. And as I said, the biggest problem for black is, yeah, what to do with his king. His king is still in the center. It's not safe there, but he cannot play short castle, as you see. Also, as I said, he cannot play long castle either, because his king will be in danger there. Yeah, I hope you understand what to do. Yeah, so let's go from beginning. d4 was played, knight f6, bishop f4, black played g6. He wants to play King's Indian or Grunfeld defense. And then after g6 we play knight c3. There are two reasons why we do this. The first reason is that we want to play queen d2 long castle as soon as possible, and the second reason, we want to gain space in the center by playing e4. That's it. Yeah, so after knight c3, black plays d5. He wants to prevent e4. After d5, we play queen d2. We still have idea to play long castle, and also we want to play bishop h6 to exchange bishops. So yeah, until now we were working on h6 move and on c6 move. We saw that these two moves are not so great for black, so it would be the best for him to play bishop g7, definitely. So he just wants to develop his pieces. That's it. After bishop g7, we play bishop h6. Now he has two options, to take there or to play short castle. Let's check short castle first. Then we can take, king has to take, and then long castle. That's it. So now his bishop is no longer on the board, and there is no danger. We can play king b1, and even if he plays c5 or something, this bishop cannot support attack. you know, and we just we eliminated one good piece in defense, and later when we play h4 h5 to attack his castle, he will have problems with it because he doesn't have his bishop in defense. And yeah, that's the reason why we play bishop h6. So after long hassle, black plays c5, e3 for white, and then maybe knight c6. Okay, the problem with knight c6 is that we can take the c5 pawn, and now it's not easy for black to take that pawn back. So for example, he plays bishop e6. You see why he does that. You see that knight takes d5 is the threat. He wants to defend his d5 pawn. After that, our bishop goes to b5, rook c8 maybe, our knight goes to e2. Why not on f3, for example? Because knight on e2 is better. Now we can jump on f4 or d4, we can choose, you know, and when we do that, for example, when we jump on f4, we're going to create pressure on d5 pawn, and also we maybe in some moment we can take the bishop on e6. So that's the reason knight e2 is more flexible move than knight f3. After knight g2, black plays b6. That would be a good move for him. He wants to open b file for potential attack in the future. After that, bishop takes c6, rook takes c6, and then e4 directly. You see, black cannot take on e4 because queen on d8 is hanging later. So he can take on c5. He has two options, to take with the rook or with the pawn. Let's see b takes first. E takes d5 and then rook d6. Then we can play knight f4, bishop d5, and then just queen e3. So what's the point now? The point is that black cannot protect his c5 pawn. So in the next move we are going to take his c5 pawn and we are going to be a pawn up. That's it. That's the point of this variation. Instead of playing b takes c5, he could also play rook c5. We take again there, knight takes d5, and then queen d4 check. If he goes back on g8, and believe me, king g8 is like, it's obvious move, the most logical move here. Many people would play that move, but that move is huge mistake, blunder. Why? Because after king g8, white can play b4, and white is gonna be a piece up. You see, rook has to go back, and then after that, knight takes d5, and white is a piece up. Okay, that's a little trick. So queen d4, much better move for black would be f6. Pawn to f6. Now, for example, b4 is not working. Now, if you play b4, the problem will be knight c3. You see, and now queen d8, knight takes e2, rook takes d8, and black will have two minor pieces for the rook. Of course, it's not good for us. So after f6, don't play b4. Instead of doing that, just play knight to f4. Again, e6 bishop is under attack, knight on d5 is under attack, so now black has to take the knight on f4, and after that just take this rook, knight g2, maybe rook a8, and you see that white is exchange up. It's good, like very good position for white, I think. So you're exchange up and you have good chances to win this game. This is one example how you should play this opening. So yeah, we were talking about g6, knight c3, and then d5. That's the main move. He wants to prevent e4, as we said. Queen d2. We create space for long hassle, and we want to play bishop h6. Then he played bishop g7, which is the main move here, and then we played bishop h6 instantly. Short castle was played, bishop takes, and then long castle, and black played c5. c5 is the best move. He wants to start with counterattack on the queen side. e3 was played, and then knight c6. After knight c6, just remember, take the pawn on c5, and it's not easy for black to take that pawn back. Yeah, so after d takes c5, we were working on bishop e6, and then bishop b5, rook c8, knight e2. So you see what is our plan in the future. Let's say that black doesn't want to play bishop e6. Instead, he wants to play queen a5. He wants to get this c5 pawn back. Okay, no problem, but it's not easy to do that because we can play bishop b5 to blockade the fifth rank. So after bishop b5, this pawn is still in our hands. a6 for black, that's a very logical move. Bishop takes, b takes c6, and then queen d4, we still have an extra pawn. So queen d4, we protect the c5 pawn, maybe king g8. Like, you see, it's there is a pin here, so black wants to play king g8 because, yeah, he has some options to play knight g4 or something, you know, so he doesn't want to keep his king in the pin. a3 for white. Why that? Because maybe knight e4 could be played, knight takes, pawn takes or something, and an a2 pawn is hanging. So just to be sure that he cannot take our a2 pawn. Knight e7 maybe? So c5 pawn is hanging, and then just play knight f3. We cannot defend that pawn any longer, so let's just give it. Knight takes c5 and then e4. Very good move. We're trying now to create pressure on his center. Knight takes e4. Otherwise, we're going to take a pawn on d5. So he takes there. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, e4. Our idea is to play h4, h5 to attack his king. And you see our queen side is good, I think. Yeah, b file is open, but black has nothing there, so there is nothing you should be concerned about. So yeah, just continue playing on the king side, and that's it. Position is unclear. I think that white has better chances. Okay. So that happens if black plays knight c6 directly. What would happen if he takes first, and then when we take, then knight c6? I think it's a slightly better option because we cannot take on c5 anymore. White can play f3 now. So why f3? First of all, we prevent knight e4. Second of all, we want to play g4. We want to start with pawn storm on the king side. We want to play g4, h4, h5, and to attack his castle on the king side. After f3, black plays queen a5. Then we can play one prophylactic move, king b1, maybe bishop d7. Okay, before we start with attack, we should activate our pieces. So don't forget that. You see that our pieces are not developed. They are still there. And if you start with g4, h4 or something, just, yeah, you don't have enough resources for attack, for successful attack. So first develop your pieces and then start with action. So knight g2, maybe b5 for black, knight c1 first. Why knight c1? Our knight is very good in defense here, and also we open this diagonal for the bishop. And you see what is our plan in the future. Maybe knight b3, knight c5, by the way, because he has a hole on c5. That's good outpost for the knight. And also g4, h4, h5. And position is again unclear. There are opposite castles on the board. So always when there are opposite castles, it's unclear position. You know, so black is gonna attack us on the queen side. We're going to attack him on the king side. So it will be very messy, very complicated. But I think that white has good chances because white has very solid position. White pieces are well placed, good, active. White king is safe on b1. You see that white pawn structure is perfect. Yeah, there is nothing you should be concerned about. Okay, but before you start with attack, try first to develop all your pieces, or try to develop as many pieces as you can before you start with action. Okay, there is the third option. So we were talking about knight c6 and c takes d4. The third option would be queen a5 immediately. Yeah, okay, he activates his queen. Yeah, it's a logical move, as you see. Also, he protects his c5 pawn. After that, we play f3. You know what's the reason why we do this. We want to prevent knight e4, and we want to play g4 in the future. b5 for black. Okay, interesting move. So look, he wants to sacrifice a pawn. In return, he gets open b file. Very interesting move, but I think that he has nothing there. So I think that you should just take. If we don't take, black is going to play b4, and when you move your knight back, a2 pawn is hanging. So bishop takes b5 is the only option we got. Maybe bishop d7 for black. And then white, look, if white takes on d7, knight knight takes d7, and then, yeah, black can just play rook b8. He can double his rooks on b file. Yeah, he's a pawn down, but he has strong attack. So why not to play something like bishop f1? Maybe it looks like a ridiculous move, you know, just we bring the bishop back on f1, but this bishop is practically doing nothing on d7. Also, when he develops his knight here, it's not easy for him to bring both rooks on b file. And our bishop is useful. It can be developed later on this diagonal, you know, so just bring the bishop back and that's it. You don't waste time or something. Just, yeah, bring the bishop back and you will see that we'll have good position. So maybe knight c6 for black, d takes c5 again. Maybe e5 for black, and then white can play a3. Maybe queen takes c5, and again g4. The idea is to play h4, h5. That's it. So for example, if black plays something like rook b8, just play g5 directly, and knight has to go, and then you see the d5 pawn is hanging. So maybe instead of rook b8, he plays bishop e6, then h4 can be played. Rook b8, and then something like h5 is definitely possible. So there is this maneuver, queen h2. H takes, and then queen h6, and then later queen h8 mate. Of course, that black has some counterplay on the queen side, but I think that in this concrete case, white is faster than black. Okay. So this f3 move is a standard, typical move here, so try to remember it. So just don't make a mistake, don't play your knight on f3. Your knight, like, yeah, maybe it looks like a natural move for the knight, but actually, knight will be better on e2 or h3, so pawn should be on f3, not the knight. Yeah, okay. So just to remind you, we were talking about d4, knight f6, bishop f4, g6, knight c3, and then d5 for black. d5 is a good move because black prevents e4. After that, white plays queen d2, black plays bishop g7, and then white plays bishop h6. So far, we were talking about short castle. After short castle, you know what to do. Take the bishop and then play long castle. After c5, play e3. What happens if black doesn't play short castle? Instead, he just takes the bishop. Definitely possible. Many people do that because now our queen is like out of play. Okay, actually, she's maybe on active square, but she has, I think, nothing concrete there. If we go on g7, for example, then rook g8 will be played, we bring the queen back, so we wasted a tempo, so we don't want to do that. So practically we don't need her there, you know, and that's the reason why black takes on h6. So he takes, queen takes. After queen takes h6, there are a few possible moves for black. The first move is c5. He wants to start with action in the center and on the queen side. Yeah, after c5, we can just take there. Queen goes to a5 maybe, and then long castle. Queen takes c5, then e3. Yeah, e3 is like normal move. We want to open f1 a6 diagonal for our light squared bishop. Knight c6 maybe, and then knight from g1 goes to e2. We want to play knight to d4, so in the center, and then bishop to e2. I think that white is slightly better in this position. There is one interesting game, Grishchuk Dominguez, so check it. It's like it was the same position, so white played 94, and yeah, you will see what happened later. Okay. So black took the bishop, white took there, and then black played c5. So after c5, remember, just take there, queen a5, long hassle, queen c5, e3, knight c6, knight g2, and that's it. Instead of c5, black could also play bishop f5. So you see he attacks our c2 pawn. So now logical move would be long castle. Yeah, true. Long castle is of course possible, but that's not the best move. So let's see. If we play long castle, for example, black can play knight g4. You see that our queen is hanging on g7 and our pawn on f2 is hanging as well. We have only one good move to play, queen h4, but then there is e6. You see, black is offering a trade. We go back. If we take the queen, king takes, and then f2 pawn is still under attack. So maybe queen g3 and then queen d6. Now we have to exchange queens. We don't want to do that because, yeah, we want to organize attack on his king. You know, that's the reason. We have white pieces here. We are trying to win the game. So that's the reason why I don't recommend you to play long castle. Instead, it's better to play queen to d2. As we said before, yeah, our queen looks nice on h6, but she's not so useful there. She's better on d2. That's like more solid move, definitely. After queen d2, black plays c5, and now, yeah, we can take, or we can simply play e3. Maybe he takes on d4, pawn takes, knight c6. You remember this move, f3. You know what is the idea. And now it's even better because when we play g4, that will be with tempo. h5 for black. He wants to prevent g4 because g4 would be excellent move for us. And then white can play bishop b5. Maybe queen d6, knight g2, a6. Now we have to give the bishop. Now it's not a big deal if we give our light colored bishop. Our knights are quite good. Maybe queen c6, short castle, maybe h4, and then white can play a4. This is the idea, maybe a5, later knight a4, knight b6, or knight c5. So now this is like a positional play. Play positionally. I think that this position, again, okay, it's unclear. It's equal probably, but yeah, white has good chances. That is important. Also, black weakened his king side already. You see, if he plays something like short castle, queen h6 will be played, and h4 pawn is hanging. If he plays long castle, also, you know, just we are going to play b4, b5 later. So it's not simple to play this position as black. Okay, so black took on h6. We took with the queen, and then we checked c5 move and bishop f5 move. So yeah, just to repeat that, after bishop f5, just bring the queen back. There is one move left to see, and that move is queen d6. Yeah, okay, so solid move. Black moves his queen on active square. After that, long castle is a good move. Maybe knight g4 for black. And then we can play our queen on g7. Now, what's the tricky thing? If you go back on h4, that looks like a logical move because you protect your f2 pawn. The problem will be queen f4 check. And when you move your queen, queen takes f2 or knight takes f2 or something. First g5 and then knight takes f2. So black will be exchange up. So be careful here, don't play queen h4, instead queen g7 is the best. Queen f6 for black, that's the only move. If he goes like there, you can just play knight h3 to protect your f2 pawn, and you see that h7 pawn is hanging. Also black doesn't have right to castle anymore, short castle. So yeah, after knight h3, you can just play e3, you can develop this bishop, you can take on h7 if you have chance for that. So black is good. So instead of playing rook f8, it's better for him to play queen f6. In that case, just take there, knight takes, knight has to take, by the way. If he takes with his e pawn, just play knight h3, and you see that d5 pawn is hanging. If he plays something like c6, then you can play e4 directly, and he already has weakened pawn structure. You know, so it's better for him to take with the knight, and then f3. So yeah, you can play e3. It would be equal position. e3 is normal move, but f3 is even better because you want to play e4 immediately. You don't want to spend time with e3. So f3, e4, that's more aggressive. If black plays c6, then white can play e4, knight bd7, maybe bishop d3, short castle, e takes, c takes, and then maybe g4. So knight e2, knight g3, and then h4, h5 is the idea. Again, attack on the king side. Now it's different because queens are off the board, but still we have the same plan. We want to create some pressure on the king side. And yeah, white is slightly better, of course. Instead of playing c6, black could also play bishop f5 to prevent e4. But we can just play g4 again. Bishop goes back to e6 and then h4. Maybe c6, e3, knight bd7, then knight goes to e2. We want to jump on f4 and to attack his bishop. So again, white is better. Yes, just play knight f4, develop your light color, bishop take on e6 if you have chance, why not? And yeah, white is slightly better in this endgame. Actually, this is late middle game, but anyway, white is slightly better. That is important. So yeah, I think we are done with d5 move. Just, I think you know what to do now. So knight c3 was played, and then black plays d5. He wants to prevent e4. After that, just play queen d2. Yeah, there are some complicated lines. I know that, but yeah, just try to practice this, and you will see that this is very good variation for white. Okay, let's continue.